Part 1. The Creaking Doors. Date: October 31st, 2024. The wind howled, carrying with it a chilling whisper that seemed to penetrate the very bones of Aisha. She stood before the imposing gates of the abandoned orphanage, a place of shadows and secrets that had haunted her dreams for as long as she could remember. The once vibrant building, now a crumbling shell, was shrouded in an eerie mist that seemed to dance and writhe in the moonlight. Aisha had always been drawn to the orphanage, a strange fascination that had grown into an obsession. Rumors swirled around the place, of children who had vanished without a trace, of ghostly figures seen wandering the halls, and of a sinister secret that had been buried deep within its walls. Mustering her courage, Aisha pushed open the creaking gates and stepped into the courtyard. The overgrown grass crunched beneath her feet as she made her way towards the main entrance. The door was ajar, its hinges groaning in protest. As she pushed it open, a wave of cold air washed over her, sending shivers down her spine. Inside the orphanage was a labyrinth of dark, twisting corridors. Dust motes danced in the shafts of moonlight that filtered through the broken windows. The silence was broken only by the occasional creak of floorboards or the distant echo of her own footsteps. As Aisha ventured deeper into the building, she felt a sense of unease growing within her. The air seemed to thicken, and the shadows seemed to take on a life of their own. She could have sworn she heard a faint whisper, like a child's voice calling out for help. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the hallway, causing a chill to run down Aisha's spine. She turned to see a door at the end of the corridor slowly creaking open. A cold, inky blackness spilled out from the room beyond, and a chilling sensation washed over her. Part 2. The Forgotten Room. Aisha's heart pounded in her chest as she approached the mysterious door. The inky blackness that spilled out from the room seemed to draw her in, like a moth to a flame. With trembling hands, she pushed the door open and stepped into the darkness. A single ray of moonlight pierced the gloom, illuminating a small, circular room. The walls were lined with shelves, filled with dusty books and strange, forgotten objects. At the center of the room was a large, ornately carved wooden chest. A sense of foreboding washed over Aisha as she approached the chest. She could feel a strange energy emanating from it, a dark, sinister power that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. Cautiously, she reached out and touched the cold, metallic handle. As her fingers brushed against the handle, the chest began to vibrate. A low, guttural growl echoed through the room, and the air seemed to thicken with a palpable sense of evil. Aisha pulled the handle, and the lid of the chest creaked open. Inside, she found a stack of yellow documents, bound together with a thick leather strap. The documents were filled with strange symbols and cryptic writing. A chill ran down Aisha's spine as she realized that she had stumbled upon something truly ancient and terrifying. As she began to examine the documents, she heard a faint scratching sound coming from behind her. She turned to see a pair of glowing red eyes peering out from the darkness. A cold dread washed over her as she realized that she was not alone in the forgotten room. Part 3. The Shadow Children. Aisha's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the glowing red eyes. The creature that emerged from the darkness was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was a humanoid figure, but its skin was pale and translucent, and its eyes were large and black. Its limbs were elongated and twisted, and its fingers ended in sharp, claw-like talons. The creature let out a guttural scream that echoed through the room, and Aisha felt a wave of terror wash over her. She tried to scream for help, but her voice was lost in the deafening silence. The creature lunged at her, its claws outstretched. Aisha instinctively raised her arms to protect herself, but it was no use. The creature's talons pierced her flesh, tearing at her clothes and skin. Aisha screamed in agony, her body convulsing with pain. She could feel her life draining away, and she knew that she was going to die. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light filled the room, and the creature was gone. Aisha's vision swam, and she could barely make out the figure of a man standing in front of her. The man was tall and thin, with a long flowing beard and piercing blue eyes. He wore a long flowing robe and a strange amulet around his neck. "I'm sorry, child," he said in a deep, resonant voice. "I should have warned you about the dangers that lurked within this place." Aisha's eyes widened in surprise. She couldn't believe that someone had actually heard her cries for help. "Who are you?" she asked weakly. "I am Elias, the guardian of this place," the man replied. "I have been watching over it for centuries, and I know its secrets." Aisha felt a sense of relief wash over her. She knew that she was safe in the presence of Elias. "What had happened to me?" she asked. "The creature that attacked you was a shadow creature," Elias explained. "They are the spirits of children who died tragically in this place. They are drawn to the fear and despair of the living, and they feed on their emotions." Aisha shuddered at the thought. She couldn't believe that the children who had once lived in this orphanage were now trapped here as malevolent spirits. "Is there any way to help them?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "I'm afraid not," he said. "The shadow creatures are bound to this place, forever. The only way to free them is to destroy this orphanage." Aisha's heart sank. She couldn't bear the thought of destroying the place where so many children had suffered. "I can't do that," she said. Elias looked at her with a sympathetic expression. "I understand," he said. "It's a difficult decision to make. But you must remember that the shadow creatures are not human. They are monsters who prey on the innocent." Aisha thought long and hard about Elias's words. She knew that he was right. The shadow creatures were a danger to everyone who entered this orphanage. Finally, she made her decision. "I'll do it," she said. Elias nodded. "I knew you would," he said. "It's not an easy decision, but it's the right one." Aisha walked over to the chest that contained the documents. She opened it and removed the stack of yellowed papers. "What are these?" she asked. "They are the records of the orphanage," Elias explained. "They contain the names and stories of every child who has ever lived here." Aisha flipped through the pages, her heart aching with sadness as she read the stories of the children. She saw the faces of the lost souls who had been trapped in this place for so many years. She took a deep breath and set the documents on fire. The flames crackled and danced, consuming the papers in a matter of seconds. As the flames died down, Aisha felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she had done the right thing. The shadow creatures were gone. They were finally free from their torment. Aisha walked out of the orphanage feeling lighter than she had in years. She knew that she would never forget what had happened here. But she also knew that she had made a difference. She walked away from the orphanage, leaving behind a place of darkness and despair. But she carried with her the memory of the children who had been trapped here, and she knew that their spirits would always be with her. Part 4. The Final Chapter. Aisha stepped out of the orphanage, the weight of the past finally lifted from her shoulders. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the courtyard. As she looked back at the crumbling building, she felt a strange sense of peace. She had finally put an end to the suffering of the shadow children. They were free from their torment, their spirits finally at rest. As Aisha walked away from the orphanage, she couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. She was thankful for Elias's guidance and for the courage she had found within herself. She knew that her journey was not over. There were still many mysteries to uncover, many secrets to unravel. But for now, she was content to simply enjoy the peace that had returned to her life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a golden glow, Aisha turned and looked back at the orphanage one final time. The building seemed to shimmer in the twilight, its secrets finally revealed. And as the last rays of sunlight faded, Aisha knew that she would never forget the orphanage, or the children who had once called it home.